The following broadcast is a Nighthawk Network presentation. This is Get Off My Lawn Live. Join us as we talk trending topics, world and local issues, and the conversations that we need to talk about as people. Get Off My Lawn Live is a Nighthawk Network presentation. Good evening, everybody. What's going on? It's your boy E-Buck, the Nighthawk in the building. Eric Buckner, to those of you who know me a little better. And this is, of course, Get Off This Lawn Live. I am your host. And this young gentleman to the next of me, I call Big Joe. But I will allow him to introduce himself and then explain what we're talking about tonight. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, my name is Joe Mosley, a retired Chicago police sergeant, detective, adjunct professor. I have done a few things in my career, and let's go right to the subject, man. Let's get this
All
going.
right. So as you see, Joe is very qualified to be in this because pretty much anybody who claims to be American actually can be, because this is what we're discussing tonight. How united are our states? Because of course this is the proper time to have this discussion. We are going into another election cycle, and we as a people need to determine what direction we should go in. Because right now, as you know, to answer the question simply, our states aren't united at all as far as I'm concerned. We probably are more divided than we've been in many, many decades, to be quite honest. But the key is, why are we that way? How are we getting there? What can we do to fix it? And what's some of the key sticking points in the way? So as we have this discussion this evening, I want to definitely hear from you, the audience. Anybody that has some comments or anything in regards to anything Joe or I may say in regards to this, please chime in and let us know so we can have the back and forth, because that's how we get to have quality understanding. So whether you agree or disagree, we want to hear from you flat out, plain and simple. So that being said, without further ado, we're gonna get into the discussion. How united are our states? Now, personally, I keep up with the news constantly. Joe does as well. We've seen what's been going on, particularly the last week or two, where you got the Republicans and Democrats going back and forth, as they usually do around this time, to let you know, okay, no, we should be the ones running things. Oh no, we are the ones that should be running things. But in the end, I think they forget, and I think a lot of us forget also, the major purpose of our government to serve the best interests of its citizens, all of its citizens, not just our Republican citizens, not just our Democratic citizens, not just our citizens that are the 1%, not just our citizens that voted for us, for everybody involved. And I do believe that's part of what is lost in the translation. For example, people remember when you go out to make your vote, whether it's for city government, state government, federal government, your vote does not only just represent you, you are voting as a proxy to say, okay, this is who I feel would best represent what I would want for the government to do for not only me, but for my city, my state, my country. And I don't think we all go into it with that frame of mind. What do you think about that, Joe?
Man, I think you hit it out the park. It's when we start talking about this, the voting thing. Let me say this, and this is going to really, I want people to really understand something. If it didn't mean that much to them, why are they trying so hard to take it from you? So, if we look at this thing called the Constitution in its purest form, remember this thing was written by and for white landowners in its pure sense.
Yes.
Not until we start seeing the amendments come in which, by the way, were written by James Madison, who himself was a slave owner. Let's understand that. You get the 12th, 13th, 14th Amendments. 1864, this is when these start appearing. But the Constitution came out when? Even at that, you have to look at these things and understand that there is an organized structure that rallies around taking away, because it seems that there's a group in the country that think that by making someone less, it makes them feel better. We have a guy that we talk with all the time, Isidoro Rodriguez. He's a investigative reporter. And one of the things he says that the system is working the way it was designed, and he's absolutely correct. I mean, we look at everything from this whole idea of incarceration. If you look at how the predatory loans have gone about, we look at redlining in itself. We had a guy on one of our programs that told us that redlining was a good thing. Black man said that. Nigerian, but he was a black man, and he meant it. I mean, he said it with such fervor that I kind of lost my calmness.
Understood.
I said some things, and I think it had to be said to him because no one else would challenge him. But now, when we start breaking this thing down, the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, 15th Amendment abolished slavery. I believe it was 1860 something, but it took them 2 years to ratify it. Now we start talking about other court. But now, again, if this was one of the amendments, now they guard the Second Amendment. Let's just that. There's a great group out there that hollers, "Oh yeah, Second Amendment," but they won't talk about the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment.
Right.
Here's what you got to understand about the Second Amendment, and please be very clear about it. It was written in order to protect slave owners from a riot that happened in South Carolina. People don't realize that. When they talk about the militia, they're talking about the militia to keep slaves intact. So, we have to look at these things. So even at that, if we look at this from a historical perspective, if this was written into the Constitution, but yet you protect one amendment so fervently, then what happens to the rest of them?
Right.
The 13th was we have a right to keep criminals, abolish slavery. Wow. But yet you have to wait till 1964, 65 to get the Voting Rights Act. Yeah. No, this country. Let me throw this at you, Eric. This whole thing with Trump. Do you honestly believe that if anybody else had done what he had done, they would not be in jail?
No. Everybody else would be locked up right now. Absolutely.
Be under the jail. Now, again, and I hear people say that January 6th wasn't, I dare you to go back, Eric, and look at our show. We were the first one to call it what it was. Remember that?
Yeah, I do recall that. It was an excellent discussion, by the way. The show he's speaking about is Behind the Blue Curtain. Definitely a show I would want you to check out. Check it out. And I do post it in the Nighthawk Network every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, definitely go check out Quality Discussions, and that was definitely one of them.
Because
go ahead, Joe.
We called it insurrection. And not till 6 months later did they start calling it insurrection. So in our lifetime, just in our lifetime, brother, we have seen a coup, an attempted coup. Now, I would have never thought after our great-grandparents, grandparents, parents fought in these wars. Now, I'm the great-grandson of slaves. That's number one. One of my grandfathers fought in World War I, and he fought in France at a place called the Meuse Argonne. Now, there's a couple of books written about this group. They talk about the Harlem Hellcats and all those. But there's a group from Tennessee, Illinois, and all kind of other places. And it's interesting because when the black troops landed in Europe, Black Jack Pershing said that black troops, but that wasn't the word he used, so you know what it is. Black troops were not fit to fight in an American uniform. They stripped the black troops, put them in free French uniforms. So they had them in a tunic, took their helmets, put them in a French tunic, French helmet, and gave them French guns, which at the time were uh, nowhere near quality as the American guns.
Mm.
The French wound up saying they had never seen a better fighting force than the black troops, black and Native Americans at that time.
Mm. And see, keep in mind, and touching on some of the things you touched on, it's several different things we can look at here. For example, when we talk about the actual Constitution itself, the founding fathers, in their wisdom, set up the Constitution in a way to where it could be amended because they knew that later on down the line, there'd be better technology, there'd be expansion into other parts of the country. They, I think some of them were wise enough to know at some point slavery was going to be abolished.
Yes.
That there will be another war at some point with England because all that wasn't settled. A lot of those things in the early amendments, you can see that. Like I said, people often misinterpret some of the earlier things in the Constitution. I mean, the Second Amendment, a perfect example of that. Right to bear arms does not mean, okay, I have the right to have 30, 40 military style weapons all through the house and basically use them at my disposal, and nobody should regulate them no matter what. That is not what they had in mind when the Second Amendment was born. But yet people are quick to point out, well, yeah, they want to take my guns. No, they want to remember the fact that those guns that you have in your home is for you to basically control what goes on with your household, to be safe in that way. In the end, you can only shoot one gun at a time, people. Okay, you got one house. All right. Even if everybody in the house got a weapon of their choice, the other 36 weapons, what does that indicate? What I mean, well, I was safe with 5, but I'm much safer with 40. And keep in mind, that's how some people look at that. Other people have a different perspective. The more guns, the better. I don't know what may happen. I don't trust government. That's why when it jump off, I'm gonna be fully prepared, just like the army taught me, or just like the air or whatever military, or basically how we learned when we did our thing down in the woods, or when we put the sheets on and talk about it, whatever the case may be. That is how we look at that. We also have to remember that we all come from different backgrounds and perspectives. Okay, there are people now looking at these United States and they see nothing wrong, nothing at all. They are living their best life. They wake up every day able to do anything and everything they would like to do or want to do. They have the perspective of, okay, as long as the money is flowing, and I'm able to live my best life, America is great. The minute you get to talk about taxing my extra money and taking away my freedoms from what I'm used to doing every day, making me wear a mask, that type of stuff, oh, now America's all messed up. Now we got a problem. So now look for the first person that agrees with me over the person that may have my best interest at heart. So that is how they use their vote. You got to remember the average salary for anybody in this country figures out to a little bit over $54,000. That is the average salary. Look at the people in your circle right now. How many of them make $54,000 or more? I will tell you now. I made $54,000 one time and one time only in my lifetime. So that being said, the average ain't my average, okay? I have to work with less. Because I work with less, I look at things such as the fact that at one point they talked about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. There were some people, like the House of Representatives, voted that through. No problem, let's do it. It is for our best interest. Then we get to the Senate. No, we can't be doing that. That's not going to be good for the people that pay our salary. I mean, our constituents. Yeah, when they gave me that envelope, that briefcase, I mean, when they came to visit me to discuss their opinions on why that should not be, that was not part of the discussion. They paid me, I mean, they asked me to vote in their favor because it will affect their business. Now, in that discussion, am I indicating that government is flawed due to possible I think we all know the answer to that. Look up the term lobbyist in your dictionary, for example. But that being said, these are people who are looking to keep their America as they see it, the way they want it. And keep in mind, because the people who are the one percenters have the type of access to government that we may not, their opinion gets heard a lot louder than ours. That is why, even though the majority of the country definitely wants background checks for weapons, they definitely agree with there should be a right to an abortion. There are things that people say, well, yeah, that's government being too involved in our business. Those people tend to be in the minority. And right now, we are working with a government that is not working with us in terms of the majority. Us people that make that $54,000 or less. Us people that live from check to check and day to day. They are primarily working for the people with the money,
Uh,
with the
Let,
cash.
let me interject something there.
Go ahead.
Let's call some things what it is.
All right.
Things you just said. Let me hit on the abortion thing just for a minute. Let me skew that.
All
Here's
right.
what people to do: take the abortion issue out of say politics.
Mm-hmm.
Look at it from an angle of property rights. Remember, those babies that were born on those farms or those situations belong to the master. So if you take that and put that into the equation, you might see a different view. Plus, how is it that a bunch of men can tell women what to do with their bodies? Now, if it was a Senate or a House full of women, the House of Representatives was full of women that said we want this, then I couldn't argue with it.
Right.
A bunch of white men on both sides to say we who aren't the people can dictate to you, then there's a problem. But now, going back to something else, I'll start off by saying this: all politics is local, and here's what I mean. All these judges that, just so you know, Trump appointed more people in his 4 years than Obama did in 8.
That is correct, including 3 Supreme Court justices
Another
out of the
discussion.
9.
You and I have had this discussion, but
Yes, we have.
be that as it may, you can't blame them for playing politics because we just got outmaneuvered. Now, here's the thing: if you look at the House, the place called the Congress, there's two houses, the upper house and lower house.
Yes,
There's 50 senators, there's 430 representatives.
correct.
Senators are elected for terms of 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Representatives are elected every 2 years.
Right.
Where's the power?
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
we sleep.
Senate.
But see, they don't sleep it because every time they run an election, when you're at home sleeping, oh, my vote don't count. And you got to remember something about the election. It's the one who has the most votes. So even if there's only one vote, I win.
Right. Right.
So if I vote for myself, you don't vote for me because you don't like me, you don't like my hair, you don't like my shirt, whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
You stay home. But here's the real irony of all this. How many times have you heard people complain, oh man, that guy he didn't get a fair trial and the judicial system is corrupt. But now
Mm-hmm.
they call you for jury duty, your butt don't go. But that one person could possibly have turned that jury.
Exactly.
So every time I hear people say, "Oh, my vote don't count. I don't believe in that," I just look at them because there are other groups who are out there actively recruiting as we speak.
Mm-hmm. And then keep in mind, people, even though we just had an election where more people voted than ever before, there were still almost 40% of us that did not vote at all.
Correct.
That's a good 40 something million people who basically said, it's on y'all. Whatever y'all want to do is fine by me.
It's
So just imagine if you would have put your 2 cents in the mix, where
right.
we be at right now.
Right.
When you look at, okay, well, I wanted all my student loans gone, but we look at a Congress that's 50-50, and because we don't have the filibuster situated the way we need to, even though we do have the slight edge as Democrat, you still don't get what you want out the deal because in some of these votes, it takes 60 votes to get there, and you don't have the vote.
Nope.
And then you look at how close some of those elections actually were in terms of Congress, where it was just a few thousand votes that determined things. That's just how close you may have gotten to what you really wanted out the deal. Another thing I want to point out is the fact that when we look at who are our actual voters, we go from 18 to 35. What percentage of those people actually vote?
Correct.
As opposed to us 35 and older. Now, the young people will say, well, my vote don't count or what have you. How do you know if you had never used your vote to begin with? First of all. Second of all, we are looking at a situation where, like I said, going back to the whole abortion thing, they are trying to regulate what you do with your body, but they're supposed to work for the will of the constituents. More women have voted in the last 20 years in all these elections than anybody. And you honestly believe that those constituents, the majority of them, are for you controlling the rights to their bodies? I think not. I mean, you look at some of the situations from state to state. Now, granted, we have the Bible Belt and things of that nature. And yeah, it probably is, I would say, 4 of the 22 states that are trying to abolish abortion altogether that are, yeah, we in lockstep with that. We agree with that. And nobody's changing how we're doing this. For some of those 18 other states, I think if you actually do what we're trying to do here in Michigan, which is put it on the ballot so everybody can individually vote on the matter, I think if you did that in those other states, you would not have abortion rights repealed at all there. They agree with the majority of the people in the country. Because in the end, isn't that what it's really supposed to be about? The actual majority vote. But then, of course, we go back to the whole electoral college situation and how we got ourselves in this thing in the first place. Because remember, if you look at the electoral college in both the first and second election, where the previous president was involved, he did win the first time. He did not win the second time. When you look at the popular vote for those two elections, he won neither time by millions of votes. Not just a couple hundred, not just a couple thousand. So again, for those people who believe that the vote was stolen and that these 8.5 million ballots just kind of popped up out of nowhere and believe that we won by a landslide, do you honestly think that for some reason just 2020 made it possible that we could fix an election, but we haven't done it any of the other times? It makes no sense. It makes no sense. But then, like I said, I feel like it really depends on what your perspective is and what your lifestyle is in this situation. For example, some of the things that concern us as people who live in cities like Chicago and Detroit, you there in Wyoming or you there in Utah, you can't relate to that because nothing like that goes on in your town or your residences. You don't need to lock the door because there is no neighbors. You the only neighbor in about 30 miles. Your neighbors are the lambs and the goats and the sheep. So you're not as concerned about gun safety and gun violence as we may be. Your situation may be where your financial situation is very stable. You got money coming left and right. You got so much work you don't know what to do with. So you're not worried about pandemic and things of that nature because what you do is something people will always need. They will always need cattle. They will always need you to work at the place that packs the food that goes to the market. So you may think, okay, I'm not worried about unemployment and things of that nature. I didn't had a job since I don't know how long. I got more hours than I know what to do with. So you're not as concerned about these types of things. You may have been a person who contracted COVID-19 and you was asymptomatic. So no, I'm not worried about wearing a mask and stuff. I had COVID. It's nothing. It's not even the flu. I barely knew I was sick. So you're not concerned about new vaccines and uh, policies that's going to ensure people be a little safer and things of that nature. These are all the things that come into play when we talk about our divisions, because part of it truly comes from what your set of circumstances are. Because
Let
again,
me address that.
yeah, go ahead.
That's a hell of a point. And because we keep getting lost in the quagmire, A little while ago, some years ago, there was a big push in our communities for tertiary, secondary care. We never got it.
Mm.
In the city of Chicago, there are two level one hospitals. There used to be more. Okay. In the black community on the south and west side of Chicago right now, there's still no tertiary care. We've got food deserts in the year 2022. Unemployment is rampant. And let me just say this past weekend, 55 shot, 11 dead.
Mm-hmm.
Less than a mile from me, 4 shot, 2 dead, all juvies.
Mm. Just a few weeks ago here in Detroit, 74 people shot, 12 people died just in a 5-day period.
But and again, to your point though, I'll have to say our people let this legislature put together a program, and I should have posted it. It's called the Safety Act. Under the new Safety Act coming in January, cash bond has been the limit for every felony.
Mm.
Did you hear what I said?
Yeah. Cash bond has been eliminated from every felony, which basically means this.
But these were black legislators.
Mm-hmm.
We just turned the lions loose on us. Here's the other thing we talk about, and again, I say that all politics is local. And as you know, Illinois has the most stringent gun laws in the country.
That's correct.
Look at Chicago's murder rate. I can tell you because I still have friends on the department
Mm-hmm.
who get, for lack of a better term, and I'm gonna call her out. Our state's attorney here is horrible, absolutely horrible.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need new laws. And Eric, again, you and I have talked about this. Look at the laws we got in the books.
Right.
Now, and that goes to something else. And I know we're going down the rabbit hole, but I will tell you this. When we look at policing and going forward, there's a term that came out a few years ago. It was called depolicing. And I didn't like it, but I get it. Most of these police today, well, let me digress. Police work, good police work, is really about proactivity. When it comes to this whole thing of community policing, that ain't a new concept. Officers have been doing that for years. They just let somebody put a term to it. But most good officers got out, walked, talked, got to know the community. In fact, some of your best officers don't lock anybody up. Now, let me just say this. You will hear police officers say, well, I'm not a social worker. Absolutely the wrong guy you want to talk to. Any policeman worth his salt that tells you that I'm not a social worker is a zip damn fool and stay away from him because he is not who you want to talk, he or she. Because in our jobs, that's what we do. Your job, if nothing else, we're not automatons. Do we, you're not going to arrest your way out of the present situation. And nor do I want you to. But again, that's leadership. Not that I'm calling myself a leader.
Mm-hmm.
But someone has to come forward and say, look, we've got to do something else. I had a friend of mine tell me the other day, he was at a Walmart. And there were kids zipping up and down the aisle, in those little carts. So he goes to an officer outside and gets mad at the officer. So the officer said to him, first off, you're the second person to say something to me, but what are they doing wrong? Now, morally, they are doing wrong. There's no question. But is that a police matter? Why didn't you take your butt over there to the Walmart manager and complain to him? But now you want to bash the police because he told you that ain't his business. Mm-hmm. And he's absolutely correct.
Wow.
If you look at the calls that policemen are getting across the country, that's why you see, if you look at Chicago, Detroit, New York, LA, look at the retirements. They will blow you. I mean, the ones in the last 2 months will knock your socks off.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be we would keep up with attrition. We're nowhere near attrition nationwide because who was to be bothered, just like with this guy, going to the policeman who's probably working a secondary job. What am I going to lose my livelihood for a part-time job when I have no involvement in it. I mean, I remember getting calls of a kid won't go to school. Well, why am I getting that call? Because they eliminated truant officers.
Right.
And so what they do, dump it back on the police.
Mm-hmm.
These mental health calls, that shouldn't come to the police, but because we, the people, allow these so-called leaders to eliminate social services.
Right.
You allowed that. You elected these numbskulls.
All right. We got a comment here. Let me see. What's going on? Thanks for joining the show. We appreciate you. Just saying hello. But yeah, go ahead, Joe.
No, that was my rant. I'm sorry. I didn't.
Okay. But no, like I said, let's just look at that for example. Let us go down to a little place we call Uvalde, Texas,
Oh,
where the first day of school started today. Understand in Texas, we can really get into this discussion of how united is our states because when we look at that, and from my point of view, that state itself is not united in regards to the thought processes. Think about it. You got parents today taking their child to different schools close to Uvalde, but not where they normally would go because that school is the type of legend you don't want to be. To the
correct.
point to where they're going to tear that school down completely and build a brand new school, which I completely agree with. As
Yes.
a child who would have dealt with that, I could not even walk in that building
No.
after that happened. Especially, Lord forbid, if I was one of the kids that were in that room that actually survived, I probably wouldn't even want to be in that town anymore, let alone in that building. But that being said, I imagine if you go around the town of Uvalde today and ask them about how do they feel about the police, probably not too good.
No.
If you ask them, should there be gun reform, they probably overwhelmingly say, yes, let's do it right now today. I will sign off on it. If you ask them, do they agree with the government that is running Texas right now, I'm pretty sure the vast majority of them will be like, oh, hell no, he's got to go. And that's that part of that city. Say you go a little bit down there to Austin, they probably have an entirely different view of the whole situation. They probably approve that message, and the governor could do no wrong. And yeah, line me up. If I had two votes, I vote for him twice. And like I said, that's just that state and how they feel. Because we talk about the red states and the blue states, and that's only just based on that previous election. Truth be told, in a lot of these states where it's not so cut and dry, because understand you got certain states like say Alaska or Wyoming that's like very Republican and very much so, but then you have those states that are like New York and California very Democrat. But I feel part of what we're working with is the in betweens. Because yes, we are quote unquote a blue state here in Michigan, but truly we're a purple state. Because when you look at how the votes break down, when you look at the bigger townships, the Wayne counties, the Oakland counties, Macomb counties, yeah, those do break out into very blue. But when you get into the upper part of Michigan and the upper peninsula, that is very much red. So, we just basically went on the concept of there's more people that live in that general area, the 4.5 million people that live in Metro Detroit and the surrounding areas, as opposed to the 5.5 million that live scattered throughout the rest of Michigan. So that is why we get to a point where we're Democrat, but not so much at the same time. And that can be said of states like Minnesota and uh, Iowa, Wisconsin, where there is very much a division within the state itself. When you look at the fact that we look at the 50 states, the vast majority of them run by Republican governors, but we look at the top 25 cities, most of them are ran by Democrats. So even there's division in terms of what we think as opposed to what actually comes into play. Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Well, you see, again, you bring a very good point. If you look at Illinois, Illinois has 102 counties. Cook County is just one of them. But Cook
Mm-hmm.
County has 5 million votes. Well, 5 million, I'm sorry, 5 million residents.
Because obviously that's where Chicago's located.
Bingo.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of the state in totality has 11 million. So if you got 5 million in one locale, and there's 102 counties. There's 6 million in the rest of the state. Guess where the power is concentrated?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say this to you. I am not a fan, particularly of what the Biden administration is doing. However, I'm definitely not a fan of Trump's administration. I mean,
Like
particularly,
I said,
I
it,
got the books,
I
man.
understand part of our problem is the fact that many of us voted on, well, it's either this evil or that evil. Let's
No,
see what we got.
no, I will. I disagree with you. I will tell you
Okay, go ahead.
about a lot of our people are guilty of what I would call one of the 7 deadly sins, and that is that someone's got to be beneath me. We have, for whatever reason, our society, in and of itself. I mean, Lyndon Johnson said, and there's a quote. I don't know if we ever proved it. Allegedly said that if you can get the lowest white man to think that he's better than a black man, we can keep them separated. Allegedly, that was attributed to him.
Mm-hmm.
Might be some truth to it. I'm not sure, but I do know this: that the division within this country along racial lines has nothing to do with the whole theory. I mean, even in my lifetime, I remember they saying, "Oh, black kids aren't smart enough." Really? I think we've proven that to be false. I mean, Hitler had a thing called phrenology, where they measured the circumference of your head to see if you were an idiot.
Right.
Again, bad science. But we let a guy who, even by his own people's reckoning, I got at least 20 books written by Republicans, observers. I have a book by John Bolton, who was a notorious hawk.
Yes.
And in that book, he says some very damning things about Trump. And he said that the reason that he and another one of the cabinet members stuck around was because they were afraid that Trump was going to start a war. Now, if you know anything about the Constitution, you'll know that a president cannot be removed under wartime conditions. The
Right.
Chinese were so scared. I mean, it was like some out of a movie. The Chinese were so scared of this guy that they had opened back channel communication, and that's documented. Documented. Now, this thing down in Florida, again, if you read between the lines, some of those files had to deal with assets. Assets meaning real intelligent people on the ground. Supposedly, they had to, one of the bureau chiefs had to move a person because Trump gave it up to Putin himself. So, oh, yeah, we got a guy.
I mean, because just imagine us still not knowing the full scenario, that you basically, as a government person, decided on your own recognition to say, yeah, these government documents, I'm just going to take them to my house.
Yep.
Yeah, I know it says top secret. That's okay. I'm the president. I say it's cool.
Right.
Who does that? Imagine just what would have happened if the wrong person, the maid that you think is a maid, but is actually a Russian spy or a Chinese agent, gets into that room, grabs the right document with the wrong information, and suddenly we are in a war, or half our government grid is shut down and we don't know how the heck it happened. We all know that this man has debts with foreign entities. Who knows to say that he planned on using those documents to pay off some of that debt, for example. These are just one of many things that concerns me in regards to that. But again, another thing that I feel is helping to divide us is the fact that we look at why and how we vote for who we vote for. For many of you, well, no, let me not say many. Let me not categorize it that way. I think for several people that vote, you base your vote on three things. One, the people that came to your house and said, yeah, you vote for so and so. So and so is going to do this and this and this. And I'll make sure they'll talk to you and what have you. In the local governments, in the smaller communities, those things happen. Two, you watched on TV and they said, yeah, if this person is elected, they're going to take away this, this, and this. So vote for this person instead. So when you got there, it's like, yeah, I can't have them take away this. I'm voting for that person. TV says so. or three, you may happen to see that one debate that you watched and caught a few minutes of, and they said something about raising taxes or eliminating jobs in the oil industry or something to that effect, and you took that one point, that one and only one point, and determined that is going to be why you vote or not vote for this or that. Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Eric, let me throw this. Let me
Mm-hmm.
quote I want you to listen to. Voice of vote, no voice. The people can always be brought to the bidding of their leaders. That is easy. All you have to do is tell them that they're being attacked, denounce the pacifists for lack of patriotism, and exposing the country to danger. It works same way in any country. Now, who said that? Take a guess. Wait, better yet, who does it sound like?
Not sure.
It sounds like Trump, doesn't it?
It's not too smart to be Trump.
It was actually Hermann Goering in 1928.
But I imagine if he knows that quote, he would often cite it.
But here's the thing. Did I not say exactly what he said?
Yeah.
So we have, how many times have we said, those who forget history are doomed to repeat it?
Exactly.
And what are we doing?
Exactly. I mean, because think about it. If for some reason they actually do bring up the charges and you actually see that man get put in handcuffs and he makes the simple utterance like, they railroad me, stand by and stand guard or whatever he may say,
Yep.
suddenly we got riots in the streets.
What did what's the boy Lindsey Graham said? If you arrest him, there'll be blood in the street. Now, a United States senator,
yes,
said that there would be blood in the street. Where
that was Durham saying, "Okay, you do it. I'm pushing the button."
Yeah, the best political weapon is the weapon of terror. Cruelty commands respect. Men may hate us, but we don't ask them for their love, only their fear. Herman, that was Heinrich Himmler.
I go back to one of my favorite movies, the movie called The Bronx Tale. When they asked, "It's better to be loved or better to be feared?"
Right.
And Sonny said, "It's right to be loved, but it's better to be feared."
Yes. Yes. Unfortunately, this again, if you read these books, John Boehner wrote a book that is worth reading. There's another book called Anonymous. Again, they talk about the different.
I recall that book. I haven't read it, but I recall.
Oh my God! It's these books.
I mean, the book by his niece, for that matter.
Oh yes.
Definitely a good read if you're trying to gain an understanding of what his thought processes might be. That of the former president.
Well, it caused his sister to resign her position as judge of the Supreme Court in New York.
Absolutely. My partner in crime, Hugh Lee, checking in. What's going on, Hugh? You see Big Joe in the building. Yeah, that's the guy that I do the sports podcast with, Joe. You know, because.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There's something else I want to bring up, just as a note of an anniversary. We've got the Little Rock 9 anniversary coming up. But how many people before the Little Rock 9, or right about the same time, there was another group called the Memphis 13. A lot of people don't know.
And Little Rock 9 and Memphis 13, if you want to give some quick history lesson, please look up those two situations. Absolutely something that I think will be good for you to know and a good lesson to teach your children, because they're not going to learn about this in school, y'all. But go ahead, Joe.
Well, we are the right people. It's incumbent upon us to do what our parents did to us, or for us. You know, there was a time when the history was taught, demanded by your parents. But we've gotten into the TV years. We've taken on some of the issues of other cultures and not done what we should be doing. You know, we've gotten detracted from what we're supposed to be doing. You know, it's almost like they bred the fight off of us. Because again, if you read King's letter from Birmingham jail, even before that, King was big. Let's not talk about voting right act again, but
yeah.
But King's thing was motivating the youth to get involved. All those youth are now our elders. So what happened to the generation between the Kings, the Malcolms? What happened? They bred the flat out of us.
Exactly. I mean, because that's something we talked about a few weeks ago when we talked about what's going on that we missed from generation to generation. And we talked about, how the church and how we interacted in church and how our thought process was kind of formulated and sitting down in the pews. I think that's only part of the scenario. We look at what they teach in school now as opposed to what we learn as young people. The fact that they want to teach slavery, but only basically want to touch upon it, as if to say, "Well, yeah, it happened, and everything's better now, and don't worry about it. Don't feel bad about it. It was something. It was a mistake. It was what's the term they use in Texas? I think Sister Natural Woman here in the building, relocation, involuntary relocation, I believe is what they called it.
Yeah.
That sounds all nice and cheery, like, oh nope, not that. But little quick read, y'all. The Memphis 13 are a group of young children who integrated to schools in Memphis, Tennessee. On October 3rd, 1961, 13 African American first grade students were enrolled in schools that were previously all white. The schools that the students attended were Bruce, Gordon, Roselle, and Springdale Elementary School. So when we talk about that, let me also get into the Little Rock Nine. They were a group of 9 black students who enrolled at formerly all-white Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, in September 1957. There's an attendance at the school was a test of Brown versus the Board of Education, that landmark 1954 Supreme Court ruling that declares segregation in public schools unconstitutional. And like I said, once you read into that, you can also look into the first students that went to the University of Alabama, uh, University of Tennessee. I believe that when you talk about these sports, you talk about University of Kentucky and a couple of things that happened there. There are a lot of situations like that where we, as this generation, have an understanding thereof. But as we have this new generation of individuals, because they're not learning these things in school, and a lot of them are not going to traditional colleges or universities, they're determined to go to trade school or maybe no further school at all. How do we keep up with that part of the scenario? And then another thing I definitely want to point out the fact that yes, there are the 62% or so of people in this country that are Caucasian or white. There are the 14% of us that look like us, African Americans, but you also have to remember a big part of what goes on here has to deal with the 18+% of people who are Latino or Hispanic and oftentimes get lost in this shuffle, but very much have something to say in regards to this whole discussion. Because for one, as we know, more of them are coming into the country every day, some of which are people are happy about, some people not so much. And then also they bring their perspective from where they come from into this discussion. See, the one thing about the United States that we have to point out is the fact that it is the great American melting pot. There are a variety of different people from all types of countries that are here. Yet that is the case in places like Canada and perhaps London. But remember, the vast majority of those people are people from that place. This is the only major country in the world where the vast majority of people have ethnicities and experiences from different parts of the world. And all of that comes into this discussion as well. Not
Well,
as much as it should, but it definitely should.
and let's keep this in mind too. They also bring them into vote. So, you know, here's the
Mm-hmm.
1896, you had Plessy versus Ferguson, ruled on by the Supreme Court. 1954, you've got Brown versus Board of Ed. So Plessy versus Ferguson says separate but equal. Then you have the Brown versus Board of Education, which says we got to desegregate. It took them 3 years to even do that.
Right.
I want you to hear the key word: Supreme Court. Again, when we talk about politics, the Supreme Court did this.
Mm-hmm.
So people have got to understand: vote, 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 vote. your local elections are as important, if not more so, than the national.
Absolutely.
And here's the other thing about both parties. Neither one of the parties have a stronghold in honesty, number one. But in order to get this thing going back to where it needs to be, whoever sits in that Oval Office has to be more of a centrist than a Republican or Democrat.
Agreed.
Because
Because remember, that was part of what Mr. Biden ran on, that he would be able to unite the two parties.
it,
Clearly, he has not been able to do that.
he can't even unite his own. I mean, you got Manchin
Exactly.
and the other girl, whatever her name is,
Right.
running, running
Cinema. Yeah.
Sigma, at doing biddings that they should not. Because, and here's where I really have a problem. All these people were elected to do the good for the people,
The people. All the people.
and not just some of the people. Some of the
Right.
time, all the people, all the time.
Right. Not just their paying constituents or the people that donate to their campaign fund or their new library, etc., etc.
You know, that was my rant, man. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh no, you good. That's why you're here, man.
You know,
We are here to discuss this thing fully. We most definitely have to get into it. True, says our Facebook user here. True, true. So yeah, like I said, there are many factors that come into play here as to why we have not figured out what we need to do to fix this thing. Because in the end, we have to first of all have a willingness to come to the table and have these discussions. First of all, second of all, we have to use the power that we have been given. That thing called your vote to say, okay, look, you've been doing this for the last 30 something years, Senator Graham. I no longer agree with these opinions that maybe my grandfather agreed with. It's time for you to move on. And when we get people in the office, let's do the right thing and start having something that many senators and representatives alike that are currently there consider a bad word. Term limits. Term limits. Because think about it from a generational standpoint. Every 20 years, we basically are in a new generation. What may make sense in 1960 makes no sense in 2022. I was born in 1970. When I was born in 1970, there was no cell phone. Hell, there was no computer. There was no internet. We got all this to regulate now. For example, things change, things evolve. But if the thinking of the good old boy network is not willing to evolve with that thinking, are they the best people to lead us? Should they just be in charge because they're older? Older don't always mean wiser. Trust me. Trust me, I know. So that's something we got to consider. When we look at our local government, and I agree with Joe completely, the local government is most important, especially when we are scared to decide because we in fear of losing our cabinet seat or our government positions as to what to do. We're gonna put it on you to kick back to the state and local government. Well, now that it's been overturned, Roe versus Wade, yeah, states y'all decide what y'all want to do, cities y'all decide what y'all want to do. Remember that whole thing went down with the whole COVID situation. Like, no, it's up to you whether you want to be on lockdown or not. We're gonna leave it to the cities and the states. But then when you made those decisions, it was like, well, okay, now we had to do that, and now we need help, and it's not. Oh, that was on y'all. Y'all didn't have to close up. No, we're not about to send you no money to help you out. That's your fault. I understand it's your money, and that you paid into these taxes that we trying to keep like it's our money. But that being said, no, we don't want to give it to you. We don't want you to utilize it. We rather send it to other countries to help them fight their war, or we rather send them to our allies to help make sure that we get our oil together so that they can send it here
hey
and
man,
things of that nature.
9 of the 11 attackers on 9/11 was Saudis. We're sending money to the Ukraine. We're sending money to Israel.
Yes,
But you telling Jackson, Mississippi to boil their damn water.
right.
Come
You
on.
telling Flint that we can only do so much to help with the infrastructure to fix the fire.
Everybody up there in Flint should be in jail.
Mm,
Everybody.
exactly.
especially when they released the documents showing that they knew the water was contaminated and still did it.
And Lord knows the previous governor, he should be locked up right along with.
It's culpability to go around. But again,
Exactly.
we keep in every state, the highest law enforcement official is your attorney general. So people know he or she is law enforcement. They
Mhm.
have the last say or the first say in who should be charged. You show me the last AG that brought charges on anything for the people anyway.
Right.
You know,
And
we
then think about it. If the government don't really matter in terms of your daily living, why are so many people constantly running for government? When
right.
they don't win the Senate, they run for governor. When they don't win the governor, they run for mayor. They don't run for mayor, they run for city council. It's something to be said for that for some reason. Have we not figured out that with that comes a power that you don't have by being basic citizen A? Keep in mind, it's millionaires and billionaires running for government. They got money. Why would they want to do that? They care about us that much? Some of them do. But I say the vast majority of those people, they have other agendas. And basically, they count on you to vote because you see their face on the TV 10, 20, 30 times. But they also count on you not to vote because you figure, oh, well, they're going to win anyway. So why bother?
And here's the thing: the poorest man is actually the more valued man if he or she is a voter because they got nothing to lose. So that's the real a loose cannon per se. I mean, so if I were running for office, man, I'd be at the homeless shelters.
And see, then again, remember, we're in 2022, people. We have more resources to research things than we ever have had in the
Definitely.
history of the world. Okay. You can actually go on websites and see how your congressman, your representative voted on each and every issue that came up before them. If those votes do not equate to what you wanted, if they did not represent your proxy correctly, why are you allowing them to go into office and do it again when you do have some say so?
Yep.
Because again, you don't vote just for you. Your vote represents your family. Your vote represents the community. It represents your city, your state. So when you don't vote, you basically say, I don't care about none of those things.
Right.
I leave it to you guys. And then when you don't get what you wanted, you have no right to complain at that point. That choice was yours. And in the end, if you made the wrong one, you got to deal with the consequences of your action.
Yeah, but I'd rather have somebody vote and make a mistake than not vote at all. So,
Exactly.
you know, at least
Exactly.
at least
Utilize the power that you have. Because keep in mind, look at this. No, I don't know about all that, but
ZB.
that would be me. I don't know about all that there, but like I said, I care, but in the same token, it's a long story. You know, they like to look into people's past. I have not lived a perfect life, but in the same token, in this day and age of politics is a dirty game, and I don't want to get that filthy. Okay,
It is well, you're talking to a guy that knows a little bit. Not much.
that you do, that you do.
And it
But
is
yes, good people. We about to shut it down shortly here. We definitely will have the after discussion here in the room, a party in regards to what we talked about. But I do want to say that it's good that you have the opportunity, if you do, to talk to people. Do that. Understand some different perspectives. Like I said, I learned something just tonight from talking to Joe in regards to my thought processes that made me think a little differently about a couple things. If we have more of these discussions amongst each other, I think we start to gain an understanding of what we need to do in order to start to correct the situation. We can't just wait for the older senators to pass away before things start to change. We can't just wait for certain states to say, you know what, this didn't happen here now. Now I see it the way you guys see it. We can't wait for people to be like, well, before I didn't care, but now all these other people moved in my town and now I care. It shouldn't take these types of things for you to get into action or for you to exercise whatever rights you do have in order to provoke change. So that in the future, when people are voting and you are looking to have them help you in a way that is beneficial to your life, you start to get more of what you need to make that happen, as opposed to saying, "No, that ain't what I want. I wanted this to happen." Because in the end, like I said, the people that are one percenters, they are voting in their best interest. They made the big money. They want to keep the big money. But those of us trying to just survive or to try to get to that level of multi generational wealth, we need to do things that are going to help us long term and not short term. We need government that's going to help us provide better education, to provide better structure, to provide infrastructure. A lot of this country was built 3 to 100 years ago. You are looking at things now where the lead pipes and the copper wiring and all that, these things need to be fixed. I mean, we look at Detroit, for example. They have made a fund now for older people with older houses to possibly get some repairs done, because who can afford to get their house rewired or their roof done and you living on a fixed income or just social security wage? These are things we need to think about in the future. Again, there needs to be a discussion at some point about, okay, since we're using all this modern technology, maybe it's a time and place now to get rid of the way we used to learn things with the paper and the pencils and the one equals naught, 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 and such a thing. Now maybe we need to educate ourselves. Okay, these the basics. Now let's input all this in the computer, and it's going to help us. But just in case you don't know, here's how to do it on paper. We need to work with this system. We need to work with the environment. I mean, we talk about having electric cars. Some people they barely have an understanding of how to work a cell phone. Imagine you're gonna have an electric car that's talking to you and giving you updates, and you basically got to push in the code to start it and all that. Imagine your average 40, 50, 60-year old trying to figure that out without some quality help and re-education. These are the things we need to think about when we give our vote to people. When we say, okay, what do we need to do to fix our country to put us back on the same page if we ever was on it to begin with? Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
No, no, I totally agree. I mean, but the key word here is infrastructure. We know that the infrastructure as it sits now is not going to last us. That's why when you hear people talk about the grid situations across the country, you got to be real careful because they are vulnerable to attack. And let's not fool ourselves. There are people that want to see us fall, even
Absolutely.
within this country. I mean, it, 20 years ago, someone said, "Oh, we're worried about it, the Civil War." I'd have laughed at them. Like, you talk about some Marvel Civil War or DC Comics, but we're looking at. We just had an attempted coup by a president, former president.
Right.
We got
And keep in mind, this ain't like the Marvel universe.
no,
Captain America and Iron Man ain't coming to help us, folks.
dude. Listen, it ain't like Bugs Bunny where you shoot the gun comes out, hit you over the head with a hammer, go back in the gun. That ain't that. These people are serious,
Exactly.
and the ones they want to get rid of are the people that look like us.
Absolutely. And then again, we as Americans can't be so cocky to not understand we can learn from our foreign adversary. I mean, remember the one thing that this man pointed out, and I can never get out of my brain because he was very consistent in discussing that. That would be my friend Bernie here. We are the only major country on planet Earth that does not have universal health care. And we are one of the richest countries in the world. We can afford to send billions of dollars to the Ukraine, but we can't figure out a system to where everybody can at least go get a physical once or twice a year for free. Come on now. Some things we do just don't make any sense.
Well, again, there was a story once that the reason that we didn't want to open borders with Cuba, again, just a story, was that Cuba allegedly had the cure for cancer. And imagine, I mean, just on the conspiratorial theories,
Mm-hmm.
imagine what that would do to the healthcare system. See, the money is not in the cure, the money's in the treatment.
Exactly.
How many of these diseases do we know of that could be eradicated completely?
Right. And then we get into the whole Dr. Sebi situation and how, for some reason, we could actually use marijuana to cure inflammation and pain and all this other stuff. But no, the pharmaceutical companies, they don't want that. That's going to take away from all these medications that they give us and we can't somehow seem to get off of by ourselves. That we try to stop taking it, but for some reason, my body just keeps craving it.
But now, here, let me throw again. Glad you brought that up. You will lock these young brothers up for an ounce of marijuana. But now you got corporations selling billions of
Yeah.
dollars. Billions. They tell me that there is so much money in Denver that because the FDLC does not allow narcotics money to be deposited, they had to build they got warehouses operating 24 hours where they just dumping money.
Wow.
I got a friend out there. He said, man, the overtime is just incredible. There's so much cash on hand. But now, again, you got Pookie doing 20 to life, whereas Lewis is making billions.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a problem with that.
Right. And then, of course, you get caught.
Who does that? Because
right, your company gets fined billions of dollars and nobody does any jail time.
Right.
Again, some of our problem is us.
Yes.
And how we are set our own self to fail. But again, like I said, this is not something that's going to get resolved overnight, but it is something that we need to bring to recognition so that we can start to understand what steps we need to take in order to get us in a better place with it all. Because if we don't have the discussion at all, then it just keeps rolling and rolling. Then 4 years, well, 2 years from now, when it's time for that next election, and we feel like, okay, well, we tried it that other way. Let's go back to how we did it before. But we ain't learned our lesson. And, if it wasn't for COVID, everything would have been all right anyway with so and so. Some people, I actually talked to one person that actually felt like that. If not for COVID, that person would be president right now. For all we know, they may have been right. That don't necessarily mean that he's the best leader. It don't necessarily mean that the person that's the leader now is the best leader. As far as I'm concerned, 2024, let's just start all over. No Biden, no orange clown, 2 new folks, 2 new vice presidents, some new senators. Let's start it all over. Sound too much like sense, right?
I'm there.
Well, we'll see. But again, this is the discussion. Again, if you guys join in later on in the rebroadcast with your comments, by all means, put them there. I will address them as I usually do. Again, for those of you in the partying room, we will have our after discussion right after this. I definitely want to thank Mr. Joseph Mosley for joining us this evening. Excellent discussion. I love to see a person that looks like me with all that good knowledge in their head. There was once upon a time when we weren't allowed to read no books. I know them people are rolling in their graves right now seeing us 2 educated brothers.
I appreciate that. I think you lied to your listeners, but
man, come on now. Yes, thanks, Joe, said Mr. User. Joe, definitely plug what you got going on, sir.
Nothing much. Just sitting here having a conversation with E-Buck and behind the blue curtain. Come listen to us a couple of times. We're on all the platforms. Go back and listen to some of the stuff and tell us what you agree with or don't agree with. But I tell you, it's the only program where you've got the input of black officers. You've got a police chief, active police chief. You got a brother that did 24.
Shout out to Chief Joe. What's going on, Chief Joe?
I wish. You got a brother that did 24 years, and we got
Chief Jim Devlin as well. Shout out to him. Of course, my big brother Stan Mason.
Stan the man.
Izzy. What's going on, Izzy? And of course, Mr. Ruffin. Shout out to that brother as well.
Yes, indeed. Wakanda forever.
That part. That part there. He always made me think of that when I hear him talk. But That being said, yeah, definitely check out Joe and the fellas on Saturdays, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I usually will post it in my Nighthawk Network. So if you're a part of the Nighthawk Network information page, you'll find the show there. But you can also find Joe on Stan Mason's YouTube page when they do the show as well. That is Stan Mason, StanMason. So that being said, y'all, we about to get up out of here. Thank you all for joining us this evening. There will not be a get off this long next week. Got some personal business to attend to on Tuesday, but we will be back the following week to discuss with you again on a topic that I've yet to choose. But you know I'll come up with something good. We definitely will be back tomorrow, though, to check out the sports podcast known as Game Time Audible. Me and my partner, Hugh Lee, will be giving you guys a preview of the NFL season, who we think our winners and losers are going to be, quality players for the season, all that good stuff. So join us tomorrow at 8:30 for that discussion here on the platform. We would appreciate it.
And thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So that being said, y'all, we are about to get on out of here. As always, be safe, be blessed, and you know, as always, we'll keep telling you that till it's that time. Please vote. It is and go Pittsburgh. Go Steelers. I think they got the Titans this week. We'll talk about it tomorrow. But all right, people, we are out as soon as I find my good old close in entrance there. There you go. All right, y'all. Later.